All right, ladies and gentlemen, cheeky lads, cheeky scrubs, bonny lassies, everybody out there on the internet. Today, we're going to talk about a work of art and an artist. The artist is Dylan Lewis Monroe, and the work of art is called The World Hierarchy Pyramid. And the first thing I want to say is go support the artist, all right? DeepStateMappingProject.com. Go and buy his artwork. Go and buy his merch. I'll put a link in the description so that you guys can buy this just like I have. Spread this information on the internet, on social media, to your friends, to anybody that you think could potentially understand this. So what is this work of art? In my opinion, it is his magnum opus. It is a diagram of factions, entities, and industries describing the power structure of the world. Who rules the world and who rules the people who rule the world. So it's not just about the earth, it's actually metaphysical. And so we're going to start by looking at the bottom here. Now, the bottom is about people like you and me. It's about the general population, the peasants, the human livestock. It's about the matrix that we live in and the cycle that he has at the bottom here: birth, school, debt, labor, taxes, retirement, and death. These words are used to describe peasants, lower class citizens, robots, clones, debtors, zombies, goyim, useless eaters, breeders, 9-to-5 slaves. So the artist uses the color bronze to illustrate the evolution through metals throughout the diagram and the work of art. Bronze into silver, into gold, and into a higher state here of a lighter yellow, maybe even a purer form of gold, and into the higher realm where it's not even a physical structure anymore. It is a spiritual structure. At the very top of the pyramid, of course, important to say, he has God. He's got explanations and genealogies, family trees in the background. He's got earthly structures like the Gaza pyramid, the Las Vegas pyramid, the Burj Khalifa, the Chrysler building. It's really a fantastic work of art, and I would like to go through and explain it to someone who is maybe not familiar with all of this. So in the very bottom, he's got this section where there are different industries, aspects of society: bread and circuses, football, professional sports, religion, the medical system, the government, the legal system, the education system, the media, entertainment, and Hollywood, Netflix. He also gives a little bit of a description at the next higher tier, the next line, what this is for. This is to keep people in control. It's to be the opiate of the masses and to keep people in the lower tier. And essentially, each higher tier also performs that same function of keeping people in the lower tiers there perpetually by influencing their mind, their income, their health, and the images and the ideas that they're exposed to on purpose to prevent them from being exposed to greater ideas like what is in this work of art that I'm talking about. So in a higher tier, he has corporations, and we have banking, insurance, credit cards, big pharma, big agriculture, big tech, mining, energy, shipping, real estate, consumer goods, communication, and the smart grid. What he's saying in essence is that corporations rule the government. They rule all these industries underneath it: football, education, media, entertainment, the video game industry even. So above that, he's got a really interesting set of things that you've probably have heard of before: the UN, the EU, the World Health Organization, NATO, BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, stock market, the World Economic Forum, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund. And once again, he's got the explanation for what these do right above it. These on the left are the financial institutions. A lot of people who are familiar with this understand that our economy as it exists now is something of an illusion. It's something of a house of cards where value is generated somewhat subjectively and dollars are printed, going back to government. And it's talking about the setup of a world government system. If you want more information on this, 30 years of work on it has been done by Alexander Emmerich Jones and InfoWars, which you can find at band.video and watch his broadcast every single day. It's one of the primary sources of information. So, moving along to the silver tier. This is very interesting. Over here on the left, he's got international law and secret societies. Over here on the right, he's got think tanks and drug cartels, international cartels, and the black market. So right here in the center, he's got Freemasonry. And this symbol you might have seen before. It is a symbol of architecture. And the G for Grand Masters of Freemasonry, and the G for God, the G for a lot of different things. I'm honestly not familiar with every single thing that's on here, and it's ongoing research. I've been researching this stuff for a long time, so I know a lot of this. And what the artist does in the center of a section, he'll have something that branches out into other things. So over here, you have the symbol of Israel, symbol of Judaism, hexagon group. This is the political wing. And over here, the octagon group is the military wing. This cross right here is the Order of the Knights Templar, and the channel on Rumble of the artist, if you want to go and check him out, is called New Templars. So go and support the artist. Go and support the guy who's synthesizing all of this information. There are so many control grid mechanisms keeping people in the lower tier of civilization and keeping them in, as expressed down here in the bottom right, of an eternal cycle of birth, school, debt, labor, taxes, retirement, and death. The antithesis of lies is the truth. It's the antidote to lies. It is the sunshine that we have to shine on people whose minds are in the darkness. And the lower tier is also further described by the color, which he uses a bronze, followed by a silver tier, followed by a gold tier. Diagrams are a way of laying out information visually, which also reinforce the degree of which research has gone into this. All of this could have citations to literature, research papers, books, academic work, etc. The artist also has a choice to keep certain elements of it simplified so that people can understand it. And this one is going to be far less familiar than the bottom tier. The bottom tier, a lot of people walking down the street probably know a lot of it or all of it. What you have to kind of use the artist's visual cues are connecting lines, which in other diagrams he uses at length. But it's pretty easy to see at least the division between the cartels on the right, which are, again, relating to chemicals and the drug trade, and international organizations on the left, which is somewhat of a repetition of the bottom, the top right of the bronze tier, the world institutions. So the EU could relate to the European Court of Human Rights, International Criminal Court, international assemblies, tribunals, protocols. One of the things that the artist is making a commentary on is the legal system itself. So going back to the bronze tier, you have judges and lawyers being the conduits of the legal system. And the artist makes a very unique comment that I've never personally heard before, that the title of Esquire is a title of royalty and nobility that is assigned to lawyers. The legal system and the legal education, the law schools, are gatekeeping organizations which make attorneys play by certain rules to further the agendas of higher tiers of the world hierarchy pyramid. So just to give you a wide view of what's happening here, he is talking about military groups, intelligence agencies, the military industrial complex on the right side of the silver tier. But he also is talking about the military in other ways. The military is part of the government. Going back to the first tier, military, police, prisons, it's mentioned right there. So on the top left of it, you have BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. Relating back to the bronze tier of corporations, these are super corporations. These own all the corporations. There's an even higher tier within the higher and lower tier within the silver tier, which is pretty interesting. He uses, the Committee of 300, the Illuminati, the Supreme Council of 33-degree Grand Masters of Freemasonry, the NWO, the New World Order, the Nazi Party, the Neutral Nation of Switzerland. I mean, the research is truly incredible. A lot of people on the street would be familiar with human trafficking and celebrity use of adrenochrome as it relates to the Jeffrey Epstein saga. Okay, guys, so continuing where we left off, speaking a bit more about the silver tier, and we've got several different things to talk about here. As of late, now, the influence of Israel on American politics has been something of a discussion for many decades. And someone recently who has come across my timeline who has become very persecuted in American politics is Nicholas Fuentes. And his commentary on Israel, specifically how the ADL and AIPAC, these different organizations, affect the conservative movement, the Republican Party, and are very influential over right-wing media. This is a very important thing to consider for all of us. In my opinion, Nicholas Fuentes' commentary on it has been spot on. He also has been a featured guest of InfoWars as of late. So the Committee of 300, the world's richest, most powerful families, and techno-fascist world controllers. This is a term that's very closely related to the InfoWar. The technocracy, the brain chips, the artificial intelligence, the robotics. He's definitely aware of all these things, and he has a pretty strong commentary on, the grand masters of Freemasonry here. Now, leaving all of this behind, when we go up to the next tier, the reason why, from listening to conversations by the artist, why the next tier has so much to do with religious thought is because the function of many of these religions is to keep people's minds focused downwards towards the earth, downwards towards earthly physical events, to prevent people from having access to higher wisdom, and essentially are gatekeepers of the truth. But furthermore than that, they're meant to distort reality. And so over here, we've got essentially the Abrahamic religions. Now, you can see this represented by Islam, by Christianity. Papal bloodlines would be representing the popes. And then you've got, of course, again, the symbol of Israel. This is actually the proper symbol. Down here, from my understanding, this is actually the seal of Solomon. and there is a slight difference there. Over here on the left is going to be far more familiar to a lot of the viewers out there because you may be familiar with the Holy Roman Empire, with the division of Islam between the Sunni and the Shia, the Jesuits, the Jesuit universities, and how the Jesuits play into American politics is a very interesting conversation. Over here on the right, you're going to have stuff that's a little bit less familiar to people because it deals with a little bit more of the Eastern philosophy, as well as some black magic, some dark magic, witches, warlocks, black magic. And then you've got Asian dragon families. I'm supposing in some way that he is relating this back to the cartels down here, which do have several different groups in them, including the triads. And moving on, the House of Windsor. You would expect this really to be over here, but for whatever reason, he has the House of Windsor. This is the British royalty family. And then you've got the Bushido Code. Now, this is something very personal to me because I'm a huge fan of studying the samurai culture and the Japanese culture, something that I have a great deal of respect for. Then over here, you've got the Church of Scientology, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. This is also an extremely interesting intellectual foundation for a lot of spirituality and ideas. Hermes Trismegistus, someone who's talked about a lot by Terence McKenna and is very popular on the internet. His famous saying being, "As above, so below." And under there, you've got Bloodlines of the Illuminati. Now, to tell you the truth, the only ones that are familiar for me are going to be DuPont, Rockefeller, Rothschild, Kennedy, and Romanov, just from brief studies of Russian history and Russian politics, something that I've been learning about more and more as of late. And as I said, this is ongoing research for me. Kabbalah and Talmudic Jews. From my understanding, there's a sect of Judaism which is more mystical, just as the Muslim sect is related to the Sufi branch of Islam, with the poet Rumi being the more mystical branch of Islam. I believe that the Christian religion also has a mystical branch to it. Some of the teachings of George Gurdjieff could even indicate that there's a relationship between Orthodox Christianity and mystical Christianity. Now we get to the middle. Right here you've got the Vatican, okay, and its relationship to Christianity. And above it, he's got some of the most interesting terms and spiritual orders. The Church of Satan, something that has become more popular over time. Zoroastrianism. This is something, and what you're going to see with a lot of these are things that are talked about in detail by one of the world's greatest scholars, Rudolf Steiner, who was also a mystic and someone who synthesized Western and Eastern religious thought. Now, the synagogue of Satan is something that is often referred to going back to Judaism because of the words of Christ in the New Testament. Beware of those who say that they are Jews, yet truly they are members of the synagogue of Satan. The cult of Baal, Baal being one of the primary demonic figures that exists in Christian lore. Now, this is a really interesting dichotomy that I've never seen very much anywhere before. There being a white pope, a black pope, and a gray pope. I'm not really sure what exactly he's alluding to there. But up at the top, you've got Merovingian bloodline. Most of us are going to be familiar with the word Merovingian from the Matrix movie. The character who is a gatekeeper in and out of the Matrix and is very French. Priesthood of Amun. This has to be most likely related to Egyptian spirituality. Coming over here, you've got the Pharaoh. The world's most richest and powerful family. So again, up at the top, he's describing what's beneath it. Grand high priests and priestesses over here. And then this branch of what you would call Abrahamic religions being related to Eve, the Garden of Eden, the serpent, and Cain and Abel's lineages. Okay, now this is one of the most important terms here, getting to the top of the first gold tier, the Pindar. A term that I've genuinely never heard in my entire life, and something that Dylan Monroe describes as the anointed leader of Earth, the spiritual leader of Earth, the true leader. Now, this might be something that is related to these popes that are listed below, because the Pope may be some kind of a false leader. Now we're getting to the really fun stuff, guys. The pure gold, the shiny gold, the 99.999% gold, as perhaps contrasted with a gold that is mixed with other lesser metals, still not the pure form of gold. Okay, this is when he's getting to stuff that's going to make a lot of people tune out. And as soon as you mention extraterrestrials and aliens, as I suppose is logical, a lot of people tune out immediately. Now, the reason why, in my opinion, extraterrestrials are fascinating to talk about is because they essentially throw out all the rules of everything that may have occurred up until this point. Because if extraterrestrials are real and exist amongst us on the Earth, then their ultra-advanced technologies, as well as their influence over earthly affairs, is essentially unknowable, incalculable. It could have a potentially complete control over the events that we see, or they could be hiding in the shadows. And the people who posit extraterrestrials as an explanation for what's happening on the Earth, they don't generally follow that up with an explanation of to what extent they are involved in our earthly affairs. So, the most familiar of all for normies would probably be the Draco reptilians, something that's been discussed at length by David Icke as well as Alex Jones on InfoWars. The Anunnaki, systems of law and enslavement. Right here in the middle, you've got Satan with a Bible passage right here, one that I'm not familiar with. Going back to just someone we mentioned before, Baal, one of the most well-known demons, as well as Moloch, who is, to my understanding, the owl demon, someone who is worshipped in secret societies and in the Bohemian Grove, also exposed by Mr. Jones. So over here, he's got a interesting, genealogy of the different kingdoms of life, from minerals to plants to animals to mankind. And then over here, he's got arbiters of space-time, universal tribunals, systems in violation, solar warden, ancient astronauts, and the 3D physical world. I'm not going to pretend like I know what he's talking about here. But again, people who have experience with extraterrestrials or who claim to be remote viewers, they are some of the most interesting people out there, aren't they? Because on the one hand, they may have an answer for everything that's very convenient. But on the other hand, it may be foolish of us to think that we are the center of the universe. So within this tier, he's got a separated, detached from source, barriers of time and space section where demons and ghosts and devils and the jinn and the archons, the asuras, this is a reference to Buddhism, the deceivers and the astral parasites exist. Now, all of these could roughly be synonyms for the same thing, for demons. Now, this is a very interesting concept in philosophy here, the demiurge. This is related to cosmology and the beginning of the universe. The chimera is a being which is typically portrayed as having 3 heads, a lion and a dragon and a griffin or something of that effect. Now, the Borg, we've got our first reference to Star Trek. What is the Borg? It's a hive mind species of transhuman, but really essentially an artificial intelligence run species that uses humans as conduits. I do not know what the nanites or the cenobites are, if I'm being honest. Trans-dimensional extraterrestrials, dark AI. So I think you have an idea of what he's talking about for the most part. Moving on to the last part of the pure gold tier, he's got another kind of mapped out region of God's law, sages, spiritual guides, devas, and the logos. These are all important spiritual terms, especially in Eastern spirituality. And then over here, you've got common law. So this is meant to distinguish between man's law and spiritual law. Common law, non-physical, Neutral forces, 144,000, just a number there. I'm sure it has some kind of significance. Karma, Ashtar command. This is a being that the artist references a lot. I'm not familiar with. Universal free will, the Council of Elders, and the Council of Light. Okay, so that concludes what is the physical aspects of the pyramid. And then you go up into the angelic realm. Now, this is straight out of the commentary of Rudolf Steiner and others, I'm sure, of the division of angels, archangels, cherubim, seraphim, and the different beings that exist in heaven and in heavenly realms. I think what's most important to say about all this is that God is at the top, and he does use the depiction of the Holy Trinity as an extending triangle at the top. He also takes the time to list out all the different names here, different synonyms for God, all of which are valuable in their own way. Lord and Father, Jehovah, Allah, all of them meaning the same thing. And this had to take a lot of work. This is an excellent piece of work by him. I would highly recommend for everyone out there to go and also take a look at his healing map, which is another brilliant work of art. But what's most important here is to just take a look at the world that we live in, the people who are powerful, and the beliefs that those powerful people may have, and that beyond belief, there may be something that could be referred to as an objective reality, and things that are true regardless of if people believe in them or not. He uses the pyramid because it is instantly recognizable as to the distribution of people. Most of the people are at the bottom, and fewer people exist as you go up. And at the top, there's only one God. I think it's fair to say that the artist is a theist or a deist perhaps, just by his inclusion of God at the top. I think that it's accurate and fair to say that God is the most powerful being, is the only being of true power, and that we are all subsequent beings, and these are all subsequent ideas to the idea of God itself as the prime mover, the first and foremost, the Alpha and Omega. And, he's got Satan in here, but as we know, Satan does not control all of the universe, all of the cosmos. He does not control heaven. And as the old saying goes, Satan would rather rule earth than serve in heaven. So everyone just take a moment to reflect on the depth of the research here. There's plenty of things that I don't understand. There are quotes over here. He who builds the highest tower steals the power of the gods. And that has to be another commentary on the architecture that we see. Do pyramids have any kind of special significance in spirituality? I think it's a fair question, and I think that a lot of people have explained that the original functions of the pyramids were to raise the consciousness of mankind, of all who entered, men and women, through vibrations and through sacred geometry. Now, there are several levels of complexity here that I'm not going to go into, but I really appreciate this as a visual tool, and I hope that everyone out there will go and do your own research, come to your own conclusions. Don't consider me or the artist to be right about everything, but just be open-minded about this sort of level of education that you're not going to get in school, right? You're not going to get it at the university. You're not going to get it from most of the YouTube channels that are out there, but this is important information to spread, and I think it's brilliant, so I'll leave it there. Until next time, guys, peace out.